It is the coldest place on Earth, the most isolated and the least understood. Antarctica is not just a continent, it is a boundary between what we know and what we think we know. For most of human history, Antarctica did not exist in reality. It existed only as an idea. Ancient civilizations believed there had to be land at the bottom of the world, a southern counterweight to the continents of the north. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. For centuries, it appeared on maps as a guess, a blank shape, a shadow. No one had seen it, no one had touched it, and no one knew what waited there. When Antarctica was finally confirmed in the early 19th century, it shattered expectations. This was not a gentle land, not a place of rivers and cities. It was hostile, unforgiving, almost alien. Antarctica is twice the size of Australia, larger than all of Europe combined. It holds nearly 90% of the world's ice and 70% of its fresh water, and yet less than 1% of it has been physically explored. No permanent population lives here. No native human culture ever adapted to this land. Instead, Antarctica belongs to ice, wind, and silence. Temperatures can fall below -80 degrees Celsius. Winds can exceed 300 kilometers per hour. Months pass without sunlight, then months without darkness. Mistakes here are not forgiven. They are fatal. This extreme isolation is one reason Antarctica feels forbidden, but it is not the only reason. Unlike every other continent on Earth, Antarctica is governed by a single agreement, the Antarctic Treaty. Signed during the height of the Cold War, it froze territorial claims, banned military activity, and restricted access to vast areas of land. Officially, the treaty exists to protect science and preserve the environment. Unofficially, it has done something else. It has turned Antarctica into a place few people can ever truly reach. You cannot simply travel inland. You cannot explore freely. You cannot dig where you choose. Even scientists require permission, and that raises a question many people cannot ignore. Why is the largest unexplored landmass on Earth also the most restricted? For scientists, the answer is simple. Antarctica is fragile, dangerous, and incredibly important. Because Antarctica is not just ice, it is a time capsule. Beneath its frozen surface are layers of history stacked kilometer upon kilometer. Each layer contains ancient air, tiny bubbles trapped thousands, even millions of years ago. By drilling into the ice, scientists can read Earth's past like a timeline. Temperature shifts, volcanic eruptions, climate collapses. Antarctica remembers everything. But the deeper researchers looked, the stranger the discoveries became. Satellite scans revealed shapes that seemed too symmetrical. Radar uncovered vast landscapes buried under ice. Fossils proved the continent was once green, warm, alive. And mixed into this science were stories, whispers, rumors of structures beneath the ice, of hidden lakes sealed off for millions of years, of secret missions, lost maps, and unexplained phenomena. Some of these stories are myths, some are misunderstandings, and some are still unresolved. That is why this documentary exists, not to sell fantasies, not to dismiss curiosity, but to ask one honest question. What do we actually know about Antarctica? In this series, we will separate fact from fiction, evidence from imagination, and science from speculation. Every mystery will fall into one of three categories: what is proven, what is possible, and what is pure myth. And we will let you decide where the truth belongs. Because Antarctica is not silent anymore. The ice is cracking, the climate is shifting, and secrets that were buried for millions of years are beginning to surface. And we are only just beginning. Antarctica is not protected by walls or borders. It is protected by distance, danger, and conditions so extreme that even modern technology struggles to survive them. Reaching the continent is itself a test of endurance. Any journey south must cross the Southern Ocean, one of the most violent and unpredictable bodies of water on Earth. Here, powerful winds circle the planet without interruption, creating massive waves and storms that can last for days. Even the most advanced ships avoid these waters whenever possible, and for those that attempt the crossing, survival is never guaranteed. But arriving at Antarctica does not mean safety, it means exposure. There are no roads, no towns, no permanent supply networks. Everything required to stay alive, food, fuel, medicine, heat, must be transported across thousands of kilometers. A single missed delivery can put lives at risk. In winter, temperatures fall low enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes, while winds erase visibility and direction. In this environment, a small mistake is not inconvenient, it is fatal. This is why Antarctica does not belong to explorers in the traditional sense. It belongs to planning, logistics, and restraint. At any given time, fewer than 5,000 people live on the continent, almost all of them scientists and support crews confined to sealed research stations. During the long polar winter, that number drops even further. Those who remain are completely isolated, sometimes for months, with no possibility of evacuation if something goes wrong. And yet, despite the risks, nations continue to invest enormous resources to maintain a presence here. The reason is simple. Antarctica controls knowledge. Beneath its vast ice sheet, more than 3 kilometers thick in some places, lies the most complete archive of Earth's climate history. Layer by layer, the ice preserves ancient air, microscopic particles, and chemical signatures that reveal how the planet has changed over hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. 4. Scientists trying to understand climate cycles, past extinctions, and future risks. This frozen record is priceless. Accessing it, however, is slow and dangerous. Drilling through ice takes years of preparation. One mistake can collapse a borehole. Another can contaminate an ecosystem that has been sealed off from the surface since before humans existed. This is why Antarctic research moves carefully, cautiously, and often frustratingly slowly. But science is only part of the reason Antarctica feels unreachable. In 1959, at the height of the Cold War, something extraordinary happened. Rival nations agreed to treat Antarctica differently from every other place on Earth. The Antarctic Treaty declared the continent a zone of peace. Military activity was banned. Nuclear weapons were forbidden. Territorial claims were frozen in place. Officially, Antarctica would belong to science, cooperation, and preservation. On paper, it was one of humanity's greatest diplomatic achievements. In reality, it created something unusual, a continent with no owners, yet strict control. Under the treaty system, access is regulated, flights are limited, certain regions are protected for environmental reasons, others are effectively off-limits due to safety, weather, or logistical constraints. These restrictions are not secret, but they are absolute. You cannot simply go where you want. You cannot explore freely. Even scientists require permission to work in specific areas. For many people, this creates an uneasy feeling. Antarctica is the largest unexplored landmass on Earth, yet it is also one of the most restricted. Vast interior regions are rarely visited, not because they are empty, but because reaching them is nearly impossible. The official explanation is safety and environmental protection, and much of that is undeniably true. Antarctica is fragile. A single footprint can last for decades. A single contaminant can alter ecosystems that evolved in isolation over millions of years. But history shows that whenever access is limited, curiosity grows. When something cannot be easily reached or independently verified, the human mind begins to fill in the gaps. Antarctica, more than any other place on Earth, lives inside those gaps. It is a continent most people will never see, governed by agreements few truly understand, and protected by conditions so extreme that even today's technology must proceed with caution. As satellite imagery became publicly available, Antarctica stopped being just a distant idea. Anyone with an internet connection could now zoom in, examine the ice, and search for patterns. And as people began to look more closely, they noticed something that sparked global debate. Not creatures, not cities, but geometry. Shapes that appeared unusually sharp, lines that looked unexpectedly straight, forms that seemed too symmetrical to ignore. And among all these images, one feature stood out above the rest. A mountain rising through the ice with four sharply defined faces, resembling something humanity knows all too well. A shape that would soon become one of the most controversial images ever associated with Antarctica. In 2016, a series of satellite images taken over Antarctica's Ellsworth Mountains quietly entered the public domain. At first, they attracted little attention. The region was remote, rarely visited, and largely ignored outside scientific circles. But among the endless white expanse, one feature stood out. Rising above the ice was a single mountain with sharply defined edges, a pointed summit, and a symmetry that felt unsettlingly familiar. From above, it looked like a pyramid, not a vague resemblance, not a trick of shadows, but a mountain with four distinct faces, sloping downward at near equal angles, forming a shape that mirrored one of humanity's most iconic structures. Almost immediately, comparisons were drawn to the pyramids of Giza. Images spread across the internet, and questions followed just as quickly. How could something so geometrically precise exist in the most remote place on Earth? The formation sits in the southern portion of the Ellsworth Mountains, a rugged range that pierces through Antarctica's ice sheet. The peak rises more than 4,000 feet above the surrounding ice and is visible clearly from aerial views. Its isolation only adds to its mystery. No nearby settlements, no roads, no easy access, just ice, rock, and silence. Geologists were quick to respond. According to mainstream science, the mountain is a natural formation known as a nunatak, a peak that protrudes above an ice sheet. Over millions of years, Antarctica's extreme environment has shaped exposed rock through powerful winds, sub-zero temperatures, and constant cycles of freezing and thawing. This process, called freeze-thaw weathering, can fracture stone along natural fault lines, slowly carving sharp edges and flat faces. Similar formations exist elsewhere on Earth. In the Swiss Alps, the Matterhorn stands as a striking example of a pyramidal peak shaped by erosion from multiple glaciers. In theory, Antarctica's pyramid-shaped mountain could be explained the same way. Ice on several sides eroded the rock evenly, leaving behind a sharply pointed summit. And yet, there is something unusual about this particular peak. Most pyramidal mountains have one or two dominant faces, shaped by the strongest glaciers. This formation appears to have four. The symmetry is close enough to trigger an instinctive reaction in the human brain. Humans are exceptionally good at recognizing patterns, especially those associated with intentional design. When something resembles architecture, the mind begins to ask whether it was shaped by chance or by purpose. That question is where science and speculation begin to collide. Some independent researchers argue that the odds of such symmetry occurring naturally are extremely low. They suggest the formation may not be a mountain at all, but the exposed tip of a much larger structure buried beneath the ice. According to this idea, what we see is only the uppermost portion of an ancient pyramid, concealed by millions of years of snowfall and glaciation. The theory becomes even more intriguing when compared to pyramid structures found across the world. From Egypt to Mesoamerica to South America, pyramids share remarkably similar characteristics: wide bases, sloping sides, alignment with cardinal directions. In many cultures, pyramids symbolized power, knowledge, or a connection between Earth and the sky. Some believe this shared design points to a common origin, a lost source of architectural knowledge passed down through time. Others argue that pyramids are simply a practical shape. They are stable, durable, and easy to construct with primitive tools. According to this view, civilizations across the world arrived at the same solution independently. No shared origin, no lost civilization, just human ingenuity, but Antarctica complicates this explanation. There is no accepted evidence of human habitation on the continent at any point in known history. According to current scientific understanding, Antarctica has been covered in ice for millions of years, long before modern humans evolved. If the pyramid-shaped mountain were artificial, it would imply something far more radical. Either humans existed far earlier than believed, or another intelligent civilization once occupied the continent. Mainstream archaeology rejects both possibilities, and yet the image remains: a four-sided peak, sharp lines, near-perfect symmetry. Even some scientists admit it is visually striking. Not proof of anything extraordinary, but unusual enough to provoke debate. And debate is exactly what followed. As researchers and theorists examined the surrounding region, they noticed something else. Nearby ridges and hills, partially buried under snow, appeared to show similar geometric tendencies. Straight edges, flat surfaces, shapes that seemed to repeat. Individually, none of these features prove anything, but together they raise a deeper question. How much of Antarctica's landscape do we truly understand when nearly all of it lies hidden beneath ice? The truth is, Antarctica reveals only fragments of itself. Most of the continent's bedrock remains unseen, mapped only through radar and satellite data. What lies beneath the ice could be ordinary geology, or it could be something far older, reshaped and reburied by time. The pyramid-shaped mountain sits at the center of this uncertainty, a symbol of how easily the line between natural formation and human imagination can blur. It challenges scientists to explain it fully, and it challenges observers to question their assumptions. But the pyramid is only the beginning, because as attention turned to other parts of Antarctica, more shapes emerged. Not peaks this time, but openings, dark rectangular forms carved into ice and rock, shapes that looked less like mountains and more like entrances. And that is where the mystery deepens. As interest in the pyramid-shaped mountain spread, researchers and independent observers began scanning Antarctica more closely than ever before. Satellite technology had improved dramatically, offering high-resolution images that allowed scientists to peer into regions once considered completely unreachable. What they began to notice was not just unusual mountains, but strange openings in the ice itself, dark shapes carved into frozen cliffs, appearing where no such features were expected to exist. One image in particular captured global attention. Located in a remote section of East Antarctica, far from any permanent research station, the image appeared to show a massive rectangular opening set into a rock face. Unlike natural ice caves, which usually have irregular edges and curved forms, this structure displayed sharp angles, straight lines, and a symmetry that stood out against the chaotic surrounding terrain. The contrast between the white snow and the deep black interior made it impossible to ignore. At first glance, it looked like a doorway. The opening appeared tall and wide, large enough to accommodate vehicles or even aircraft. Shadows within the structure suggested depth, not just a surface indentation. From certain angles, the entrance seemed deliberately positioned, as if carved or reinforced rather than eroded randomly by wind or ice. The more people examined the image, the more unsettling it became. Naturally, scientists stepped in to offer explanations. According to glaciologists, Antarctica's ice is in constant motion. Glaciers slowly slide over bedrock, melting and refreezing as pressure builds and releases. Over long periods, this movement can form tunnels, caves, and voids. Wind erosion can also carve clean-looking openings, especially in regions where rock and ice meet. What appears artificial from above may simply be a rare combination of natural forces, yet the explanation did not satisfy everyone. The reason is simple. Nature rarely creates perfect geometry. In most natural ice caves, edges are uneven, curved, and fractured. Snow accumulates irregularly. Meltwater leaves chaotic patterns behind. But this opening appeared different. Its lines were clean, its shape was deliberate, and its placement, centered along a rock face, raised more questions than answers. As the image spread online, comparisons followed. Some pointed to military hangars carved into mountains during the Cold War. Others referenced underground facilities built into rock faces in remote regions across the world. The resemblance was uncomfortable. Then came the second discovery. In another region, closer to the Antarctic coastline, satellite imagery revealed a wide cave entrance at the base of a snow-covered slope. The darkness inside the opening was absolute, swallowing light entirely. But what drew attention wasn't just the cave, it was what appeared below it. Series of horizontal lines ran up the slope, leading directly into the entrance. They were evenly spaced, parallel, and rose gradually, forming what looked unmistakably like steps. A staircase leading into the mountain. Geologists struggled to explain this one. Natural rock layers rarely form such consistent platforms. Snow deposition can create horizontal bands, but these usually fade unevenly and collapse over time. These steps, however, appeared solid and persistent. In some years, they were partially buried. In others, they emerged again after seasonal winds cleared the snow, sometimes even more defined than before. The fact that these features seemed to appear, disappear, and reappear over time only deepened the mystery. Some scientists suggested that shifting ice exposed different layers of rock, creating the illusion of steps. Others argued that melting and refreezing cycles could temporarily sharpen natural formations. But even among professionals, there was hesitation. The formations were unusual, rare, difficult to categorize. Speculation filled the gap left by uncertainty. Could these openings be entrances to subglacial structures? Were they ventilation shafts, ancient tunnels, or modern facilities hidden beneath kilometers of ice? Theories ranged from lost civilizations to secret military bases to experimental research zones sealed from public view. Fueling these ideas was a simple reality. Antarctica is one of the most restricted places on Earth. Large areas are off-limits to civilians. Flight paths are controlled. Certain regions cannot be visited without international approval. And while the Antarctic Treaty officially promotes peace and science, it also ensures that much of the continent remains unseen by the public. This secrecy creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, imagination thrives. But not all evidence comes from speculation. Some discoveries are undeniable. As ice shelves crack and retreat, new areas of Antarctica are being exposed for the first time in thousands or even millions of years. And when scientists gain access to these newly revealed regions, what they find is often unexpected. In some cases, the ice uncovers landscapes shaped not by glaciers, but by flowing water, river valleys, hills, basins, landscapes that should not exist beneath an ice sheet. These findings force researchers to confront a larger truth. Antarctica has not always been frozen. There was a time when this continent was green. And once that reality is accepted, a far more unsettling question emerges. If Antarctica was once warm, habitable, and exposed, what else might have existed here before the ice arrived? The doorways, the steps, the symmetrical peaks, perhaps they are illusions, or perhaps they are fragments, remnants of something far older than we are prepared to acknowledge. Because beneath the ice, Antarctica is not silent, it is hiding a history. To understand why Antarctica continues to fuel so much speculation, we have to step far beyond recorded human history into a time when this frozen continent was something entirely different. Long before ice covered its mountains and buried its valleys, Antarctica was not a wasteland, it was alive. For decades, scientists believed this idea was impossible, but the evidence tells a different story, one preserved not in myths or legends, but in stone, sediment, and fossilized life hidden beneath the ice. In the early 20th century, during one of the most dangerous periods of polar exploration, members of Robert Falcon Scott's expedition made a discovery that would quietly change scientific thinking. Near the Beardmore Glacier, just a few hundred kilometers from the South Pole, they found fossilized leaves embedded in rock. These were not the remains of moss or simple plants. They resembled beech trees, species that require temperate conditions to survive. At the time, the discovery was met with disbelief. Some assumed the samples had been contaminated or misidentified. Antarctica, after all, was supposed to be eternally frozen, but the fossils were real. As research continued through the decades, more discoveries followed. On Alexander Island and along the Antarctic Peninsula, scientists uncovered entire fossilized forests, trees still rooted in ancient soil, preserved exactly where they once grew. Some stood over 7 meters tall. Around them were layers of pollen, leaves, and organic matter, unmistakable evidence of a lush, thriving ecosystem. These were not scattered fragments carried by wind or water. They were forests, frozen in time. Geological dating revealed something even more astonishing. These forests existed around 100 million years ago, during the age of dinosaurs. At that time, Antarctica was not a polar desert. It was part of a warmer world, connected to other southern continents like Australia, Africa, and South America. Rivers flowed across its surface. Wetlands spread through its lowlands. Rain fell regularly. Even during months of polar darkness, temperatures remained mild enough to support life. Recent drilling beneath the ice has strengthened this picture. Deep sediment cores extracted off the Antarctic coast revealed ancient pollen from grasses, shrubs, and flowering plants. Some samples suggest that parts of Antarctica remained ice-free far more recently than scientists once believed, possibly as late as 12 million years ago. This challenges earlier assumptions that the continent froze suddenly and completely. Instead, Antarctica's transformation was slow. Ice advanced gradually, forests retreated, rivers froze, life adapted, migrated, or vanished. The continent did not die overnight. It faded into silence over millions of years. This timeline raises an uncomfortable question. If Antarctica was habitable for so long, could it have supported more than just plants and animals? Mainstream archaeology answers no. According to current understanding, modern humans evolved in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago, long after Antarctica had already entered deep glaciation. The ice sheets, according to the oldest samples, are more than 14 million years old. From this perspective, there is no overlap, no window in which humans could have lived there. And yet, uncertainty remains. Scientific timelines are built on available data, and Antarctica offers very little of it. Over 98% of the continent is buried beneath ice. Only small fragments of bedrock are visible. What lies below remains largely unmapped. Entire mountain ranges, valleys, and basins exist unseen, detected only through radar and gravitational measurements. When scientists recently used ice-penetrating radar in East Antarctica, they uncovered an ancient landscape the size of Belgium hidden beneath the ice. A complete river system, hills, ridges, and valleys shaped by flowing water, untouched for at least 14 million years. It looked more like northern Europe than a polar desert, a place that once could have supported complex ecosystems. This discovery does not prove the existence of ancient civilizations, but it does prove something equally important. Antarctica's past is far more dynamic than once believed, and where uncertainty exists, theories follow. Some researchers speculate that earlier human-like species, or unknown intelligent cultures, could have existed during brief warm periods before the ice fully took hold. Others argue that if advanced civilizations existed elsewhere on Earth, they may have explored or settled Antarctica when conditions allowed, only to be erased by climate change. There is no accepted evidence to support these ideas, no cities, no tools, no inscriptions, but absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence, especially on a continent we cannot fully access. This is where ancient maps enter the story, maps that appear to show Antarctica before it was frozen, maps that should not exist, and one map above all others would become the cornerstone of one of the most controversial debates in historical cartography. In 1513, more than 400 years before satellites, aerial photography, or polar expeditions, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis created a world map that would later become one of the most controversial documents in the history of cartography. Compiled on parchment using multiple older source maps, some of which Piri Reis himself claimed were extremely ancient, this map depicted coastlines with a level of accuracy that seemed impossible for its time. The map shows Western Europe, North Africa, and the eastern coastline of South America in remarkable detail. But it is what appears at the bottom of the map that has sparked more than a century of debate. A large southern landmass stretching eastward beneath South America appears to resemble the coastline of Antarctica, not as it exists today, buried under ice, but as it would look without its ice sheet. At first, historians dismissed the idea. They argued that the southern landmass was simply an exaggerated extension of South America, or a fictional continent known as Terra Australis, a hypothetical land believed by ancient and medieval scholars to balance the northern continents. This explanation made sense, at least initially. But then scientists began comparing the map's outlines to modern seismic data. What they found was unsettling. When the Piri Reis coastline was adjusted for projection distortion, parts of it appeared to align closely with the actual bedrock coastline of Antarctica, particularly Queen Maud Land, features that are invisible today beneath more than a kilometre of ice. Some of the mountain ranges on the map also seemed to match subglacial topography revealed only in the 20th century through radar imaging. The question became unavoidable. How could a 16th century map show details of a continent that would not be officially discovered until 1820? Piri Reis himself offered a clue. In the notes written along the edges of the map, he explained that his work was based on earlier charts, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. He mentioned ancient mariners, lost libraries, and maps passed down through generations. Whether these claims were true or exaggerated remains unknown, but they suggest that the Piri Reis map was not an original creation. It was a compilation of something far older. This idea was later expanded by historian Charles Hapgood in the mid-20th century. Hapgood proposed that an advanced prehistoric civilization may have existed long before recorded history, one capable of global exploration and accurate mapping. According to his theory, this civilization charted the world's coastlines during a time when sea levels were lower and parts of Antarctica were ice-free. When that civilization collapsed, its knowledge survived only in fragments, preserved through copies and reinterpretations. Hapgood's work gained unexpected attention when Albert Einstein wrote the foreword to one of his books. While Einstein did not endorse Hapgood's conclusions, he acknowledged that Earth's crust is not fixed and that large-scale shifts could occur under certain conditions. This small endorsement gave the theory credibility in the public imagination, even as mainstream academia rejected it. Critics argue that the Piri Reis map does not show Antarctica at all. They point out inconsistencies in scale, orientation, and artistic interpretation. They argue that the resemblance is coincidental, the result of pattern recognition rather than evidence, and from a strict scientific standpoint, they may be right. But the mystery refuses to disappear. The Piri Reis map is not alone. Other ancient maps, such as those attributed to Oroncefinet and Philippe Boich, also depict a southern continent divided by rivers and mountains, features that match what modern science now knows exists beneath Antarctica's ice. These maps predate any official exploration of the region. Together, they form a pattern that is difficult to ignore. Even if these maps do not prove the existence of a lost civilization, they suggest something profound. Knowledge may survive catastrophes, information may outlive cultures, and the past may be far more complex than linear timelines allow. This brings us back to Antarctica itself. If ancient people did not live there, could they have known about it? Could they have sailed its coasts during warmer periods? Could they have mapped it before ice transformed the continent beyond recognition? These questions do not require extraordinary answers. They require only one assumption: that human history may include chapters we have not yet discovered, and Antarctica, sealed beneath ice and governed by silence, may still hold those chapters. But maps and theories are only part of the story. Beneath the ice itself, scientists have discovered something equally extraordinary: entire worlds of water sealed off from the surface for millions of years. Lakes, rivers, ecosystems hidden beneath the frozen skin of the continent. And what lives in those dark waters may change how we understand life itself. Beneath Antarctica's vast ice sheet, hidden far beyond sunlight and untouched by the outside world, lies a network of liquid water unlike anything else on Earth. For most of human history, the idea that lakes and rivers could exist beneath kilometers of solid ice seemed impossible. Yet modern science has revealed that Antarctica is not a frozen solid block. It is a living system, with water flowing silently below its surface. The most famous of these hidden bodies of water is Lake Vostok. Buried nearly 4,000 meters beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet, Lake Vostok is one of the largest freshwater lakes on the planet, roughly the size of Lake Ontario. What makes it extraordinary is not just its size, but its isolation. The lake has been sealed off from the surface for an estimated 15 to 25 million years, completely cut off from sunlight, atmospheric oxygen, and direct contact with the rest of the planet. For decades, scientists debated whether life could exist in such an extreme environment. Temperatures hover well below freezing, pressure is immense, there is no photosynthesis, and yet the lake remains liquid, kept warm by geothermal heat rising from deep within the Earth and insulated by the crushing weight of the ice above. When Russian scientists finally drilled into Lake Vostok in 2012, it marked one of the most delicate scientific operations ever attempted. Extreme precautions were taken to avoid contaminating the pristine water below. As the drill broke through, pressurized lake water surged upward into the borehole, freezing instantly and sealing the opening again. Although direct samples were limited, later analysis suggested the presence of microbial life, organisms capable of surviving without sunlight, feeding instead on minerals and chemical reactions. Lake Vostok is not unique. Over the last 2 decades, scientists have identified more than 400 subglacial lakes beneath Antarctica. Some are vast and stable, others fill and drain periodically, connected by slow-moving subglacial rivers that flow beneath the ice sheet like hidden veins. Together, they form a massive, unseen hydrological network that reshapes how we understand the continent. One of the most surprising discoveries came from Lake Mercer, buried beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet. In 2018, researchers successfully accessed the lake using clean drilling technology. What they found was astonishing. In total darkness, under extreme pressure, the lake hosted a thriving microbial ecosystem. Bacteria not only survived, but actively process nutrients, forming the foundation of a food web entirely independent of sunlight. Even more unexpected was the discovery of complex microbial structures in places like Lake Enigma. There, scientists observed dense mats of microorganisms forming layered carpet-like formations on the lakebed. These communities showed signs of cooperation, competition, and adaptation, behaviors once thought impossible in such extreme isolation. These findings have implications far beyond Antarctica. If life can thrive beneath kilometers of ice on Earth, it may also exist beneath the icy shells of other worlds. Moons like Europa and Enceladus, orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, are believed to harbor vast subsurface oceans beneath frozen crusts. Antarctica has become a testing ground for astrobiology, offering a glimpse into how life might survive elsewhere in the universe. But the surprises do not stop beneath the ice. As warming temperatures cause ice shelves to crack and collapse along Antarctica's coast, scientists have been given rare, fleeting access to ecosystems hidden for centuries. When sections of the George VI ice shelf broke apart, researchers explored the newly exposed seafloor below. What they found defied expectations. In complete darkness, far from any sunlight, large and complex life forms flourished. Giant sea spiders, fish, corals, sponges, and octopuses thrived in conditions previously thought uninhabitable. Some of these organisms appeared to be decades old, suggesting long-term stability beneath the ice. They survived not on photosynthesis, but on nutrients carried by deep ocean currents, feeding ecosystems hidden from the surface world. In another drilling operation beneath the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf, scientists encountered something even stranger. At a location more than 200 kilometers from open ocean, they discovered a massive boulder on the seafloor, covered in stationary life forms. Sponges and unknown filter feeders anchored to the rock. These creatures lived in total darkness, surviving on microscopic food drifting in from distant currents. It was a biological puzzle that challenged existing models of marine ecosystems. Each of these discoveries reinforces a single truth: Antarctica is not empty. It is not dead. It is one of the most biologically surprising places on Earth. And yet, the presence of life beneath the ice also fuels deeper questions. If complex ecosystems can exist unseen for millions of years, what else might be hidden? Are there structures, formations, or environments beneath the ice that have not yet been detected? Could parts of Antarctica remain unexplored, not just because they are dangerous, but because they are unknown? Science does not claim hidden civilizations or secret bases beneath the ice, but it does confirm something equally unsettling. We have explored only a fraction of this continent. Vast regions remain untouched, unmapped, and unseen. Antarctica guards its secrets well, and while science uncovers one layer at a time, there are still phenomena on the surface, visible to the human eye, that defy easy explanation. One of them appears not as ice or rock, but as something far more disturbing, a waterfall that looks like blood. Deep within one of the coldest and driest regions on Earth, a place that feels more like Mars than our own planet, Antarctica reveals one of its most haunting sights. In the McMurdo Dry Valleys, an area almost completely free of snow and ice, a vivid red waterfall pours from the face of the Taylor Glacier. Against the stark white and blue of the ice, it looks unmistakably like blood. Scientists call it Blood Falls. Discovered in 1911 during Robert Falcon Scott's expedition, Blood Falls puzzled explorers for decades. At first, many believed the red color came from algae. Others suspected mineral contamination from the surrounding rock, but none of these explanations fully accounted for its intensity or persistence. The waterfall appeared to pulse, flowing intermittently as if driven by something hidden deep within the glacier. For years, Blood Falls remained a mystery. Modern research finally uncovered the source, and the explanation was no less extraordinary than the appearance itself. Beneath the Taylor Glacier lies an ancient saltwater reservoir trapped under hundreds of meters of ice. This water is rich in iron, far saltier than seawater, and completely cut off from the surface. It has remained isolated for millions of years, sealed away in darkness and extreme pressure. When this iron-rich brine is forced through cracks in the glacier and reaches the surface, it reacts with oxygen in the air. The iron oxidizes, much like rust, turning the water a deep, blood-red color. The result is the eerie flow that gives Bloodfalls its name, but chemistry is only part of the story. Hidden within this ancient water is life. Scientists discovered microorganisms living in the brine, surviving without sunlight or oxygen. These extremophiles feed on sulfur and iron, using chemical reactions to generate energy in a process unlike anything seen in surface ecosystems. They have adapted to conditions once thought incompatible with life, offering profound insights into biology's limits. This discovery reshaped scientific thinking. If life can survive in such isolation on Earth, it could exist in similar environments elsewhere, beneath the ice of Mars or in the subsurface oceans of distant moons. Bloodfalls became more than a curiosity. It became a window into the possibilities of life beyond our planet. Yet despite the scientific explanation, Bloodfalls continues to fuel speculation. Some theorists argue that the phenomenon may be connected to deeper subglacial systems, possibly even artificial structures buried beneath the ice. They point to the unusual pressure driving the flow, the persistence of the reservoir, and the region's proximity to other unexplained features. While there is no evidence to support such claims, the lack of direct access to these deep systems keeps speculation alive. What unsettles many observers is not just Bloodfalls itself, but its location. The McMurdo Dry Valleys are already one of the most unusual places on Earth. They receive almost no precipitation, experience constant katabatic winds, and host landscapes that look untouched by time. Within this environment, Bloodfalls feels almost out of place, a vivid reminder that Antarctica is far more complex beneath the surface than it appears, and Bloodfalls is not alone. Throughout Antarctica, scientists have documented strange colorations in ice, unexpected chemical signatures, and unexplained thermal anomalies. In some regions, heat flows from below the crust far more strongly than expected. In others, ice melts from beneath rather than from above. These anomalies suggest that Antarctica is geologically active in ways we are only beginning to understand. Some researchers believe this activity is linked to a vast rift system beneath West Antarctica, similar to the tectonic rifts found in East Africa. This hidden rift may explain volcanic heat, subglacial lakes, and unusual ice behavior. Others suggest that mantle plumes, columns of hot material rising from deep within the Earth, may be warming the ice from below. These explanations are grounded in geology, yet they also leave room for unanswered questions. Why do certain regions show concentrated anomalies while others remain stable? Why do some subglacial systems appear interconnected in ways that defy simple models? And why does so much of Antarctica remain inaccessible, even to scientists? As these questions persist, stories continue to emerge from those who have spent time on the continent. Explorers, researchers, and support staff have described strange sensations, feelings of being watched, sounds carried unnaturally through the ice, and moments of profound unease during long periods of isolation. Psychologists often attribute these experiences to the extreme environment, sensory deprivation, and the human mind's response to isolation. But Antarctica has a way of amplifying uncertainty. The endless white horizon, the silence, the knowledge that beneath your feet lie kilometers of ice, hiding landscapes no human has ever seen. It is in this environment that imagination and fear easily intertwine, and yet some of the most unsettling stories tied to Antarctica are not about ice or geology. They are about what has been seen moving through its waters, shapes in the sea, figures in the ice, creatures that do not fit any known classification, legends born in the most isolated place on Earth. Antarctica is not only a place of ice and science, it is also a place where stories are born. In the most isolated environment on Earth, where darkness can last for months and silence stretches endlessly in every direction, the human mind behaves differently. And it is here, at the edge of endurance, that some of the most unsettling legends of the modern age have emerged. Among the most persistent is the legend of the Ningen. First reported in the early 2000s by crew members aboard Japanese research and fishing vessels in the Southern Ocean, the Ningen is described as a massive pale white entity seen near the Antarctic ice edge. Witnesses claim it can reach lengths of up to 30 meters. Its body is smooth and humanoid in shape, lacking clear facial features, except for two dark eyes and a wide, expressionless mouth. Some accounts describe it rising silently from the water, observing ships before slipping back beneath the surface. Others say it moves alongside icebergs, almost indistinguishable from the frozen landscape until it shifts. In certain reports, the creature has arms and hands. In others, it appears more like a gigantic aquatic being, with fins instead of limbs. What makes the Ningen legend unique is not just its description, but its consistency. Independent reports, separated by years and thousands of kilometers, describe remarkably similar features. And unlike ancient sea monster myths, these sightings come from trained observers, sailors, researchers, and navigators familiar with polar waters. Scientists, however, offer rational explanations. Icebergs can take on strange shapes. Large whales, especially albino or light-colored individuals, can appear unfamiliar in polar lighting. Optical illusions caused by cold air, fog, and reflection are common in Antarctic waters. Under extreme conditions, the brain fills gaps in perception, especially when fatigue and isolation are involved. And yet, the legend persists. The Ningen is not the only creature tied to Antarctica's waters. Older myths speak of colossal beings beneath the Southern Ocean, versions of the Kraken, adapted to the south rather than the north. In 2016, satellite imagery near Deception Island revealed a long, dark shape beneath the surface. While geologists identified it as a sea stack, the image was enough to reignite speculation. The Southern Ocean is one of the least explored marine environments on Earth. Giant squid and colossal squid, among the largest invertebrates ever discovered, are known to inhabit its depths. The idea that other unknown species exist there is not unreasonable, but not all stories involve creatures. Some involve presence. Throughout the 20th century, explorers stationed in Antarctica recorded strange psychological experiences, feelings of being watched, footsteps heard outside tents during storms where no one could be, shadows glimpsed at the edge of vision. These reports span decades and cultures, appearing in British, Norwegian, American, and Russian expedition journals. One of the most famous accounts comes from Sir Ernest Shackleton during his 1916 trek across South Georgia Island after the loss of the Endurance. Shackleton described the unmistakable sensation of a fourth presence walking alongside his group, even though only 3 men were there. His companions later admitted they felt the same thing. The experience was so vivid that Shackleton wrote about it years later, unable to fully explain it. Psychologists call this phenomenon the third man effect. It has been reported by mountaineers, sailors, disaster survivors, and polar explorers. Under extreme stress, the brain may create a guiding presence, a hallucination born not of fear but of survival instinct. In Antarctica, where conditions are relentlessly hostile, this effect appears more frequently than anywhere else on Earth. Then there are the abandoned huts. Scattered across the Antarctic landscape are structures left behind by early expeditions, wooden huts, supply depots, and research outposts frozen in time. Personnel stationed nearby have occasionally reported unexplained noises coming from these structures, doors creaking open without wind, tools disappearing and later reappearing exactly where they were left, radios picking up strange interference. Scientists attribute these experiences to environmental factors. Wind behaves unpredictably in polar regions. Temperature changes cause wood and metal to expand and contract violently. Isolation heightens awareness and imagination. In a place where the margin between life and death is thin, the mind remains on constant alert. Still, even rational explanations cannot fully erase the unease, because Antarctica does something unusual to people. It removes distraction. There are no cities, no familiar sounds, no escape. The vastness forces introspection. Time slows, thoughts grow louder, and in that mental stillness, uncertainty takes shape. This psychological landscape is as real as the physical one, and it plays a crucial role in the stories we tell about Antarctica. Stories that blur the line between observation and interpretation, between fact and fear, between what is seen and what is felt. But not all mysteries tied to Antarctica are born in the mind. Some are tied to history, to secrecy, to human ambition, and to events that unfolded not in ancient times, but in the shadow of the 20th century's greatest conflict. Because as the world descended into war, one frozen continent drew the attention of powers desperate to control the future. As the 20th century reached its most volatile moment, Antarctica quietly moved from the edge of human curiosity to the center of global strategy. In 1938, just months before the outbreak of the Second World War, Nazi Germany launched a secret expedition to the frozen south. Officially, the mission was economic, aimed at securing whaling resources to support Germany's war machine. But the scale and secrecy of the operation suggested deeper intentions. The expedition mapped vast areas of Queen Maud Land, dropping territorial markers from aircraft and naming the region Neuschwabenland. Thousands of aerial photographs were taken, many of which disappeared during the chaos of war. What Germany truly discovered or hoped to establish remains unknown. After the war, the mystery deepened. In 1946, the United States launched Operation High Jump, the largest military expedition ever sent to Antarctica. 13 ships, dozens of aircraft, and over 4,000 personnel were deployed under the command of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Officially, it was a training mission and a scientific survey, but its size, speed, and sudden early termination raised questions that have never been fully answered. Byrd himself later warned that future wars could be launched from the polar regions, a statement that fueled decades of speculation. Soon after, something unprecedented happened. In 1959, at the height of Cold War tensions, rival superpowers signed the Antarctic Treaty. Military activity was banned, nuclear testing was prohibited, territorial claims were frozen. Antarctica was declared a continent for peace and science. On the surface, it was a triumph of diplomacy, but to some, it felt like a lock placed on a door humanity was not meant to open. Today, access to Antarctica is tightly controlled. Only select scientists are allowed deep inland. Certain regions are restricted. Airspace is monitored. Vast areas remain unexplored, not because we lack the technology, but because permission is required. For skeptics, this level of control feels excessive. For scientists, it is necessary to protect one of Earth's last untouched environments. The truth likely lies somewhere between. What cannot be denied is this: Antarctica is no longer silent. Its ice is melting, its glaciers are shifting, ancient landscapes are emerging after millions of years. Subglacial ecosystems are being revealed. Species once thought impossible are being discovered, and the continent is becoming a mirror, reflecting not only Earth's past, but its future. As climate change accelerates, Antarctica holds the key to global sea levels, ocean circulation, and planetary stability. What happens here will affect every coastline, every nation, every generation to come. The frozen continent is no longer distant. It is connected to all of us. Yet beyond the science, the legends remain. The maps that should not exist, the structures seen from above, the lakes sealed from time, the creatures, the shadows, the unanswered questions. Perhaps Antarctica hides no lost civilizations, no secret bases, no ancient gods beneath the ice. Or perhaps the greatest mystery is not what lies hidden there, but how little we truly know about our own planet. Antarctica reminds us that human knowledge is incomplete, that history is fragile, that nature is vast, patient, and indifferent to belief. It is a place where certainty dissolves, where questions linger longer than answers. And maybe that is why it fascinates us so deeply. Because in a world mapped, measured, and monitored, Antarctica remains one of the last great unknowns, a land of ice and memory, of science and silence, of truth and imagination, the forbidden continent. And until the ice fully releases its grip, Antarctica will continue to watch us quietly while we decide what kind of future we are leaving behind.